Recording in progress.
Mayor's virtual cabinet in the community council district 7. We have a microphone on. Can we mute that? That would be great. Is everybody up on that? Somebody has their microphone on so that we don't have echo. Okay. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. I can hear it. But you know what? The show goes on. Let's just move forward. As I said, welcome to the mayor's virtual cabinet in the community council district 7. And Councilman Clark is the councilman for District 7. Before we get started on this really fall night, allow me to provide some housekeeping info, if you will. And I'm not sure if any of the translators have their microphones on. I know that we had some join late. If we could just cue those individuals, or at least check back with them to make sure, so that we don't have that throughout. And before I introduce the mayor. We have several translators for tonight's CIC on Zoom, and one of our Spanish-speaking participants who has been with us throughout, Valentina, is going to be the one who is translating Spanish. And I believe Kenny is going to be the one who is translating in Vietnamese in that order. Now, they will join us just shortly. So access, or let me just say this, if you need translation services, you can also find those services on the mayor's Facebook page or on the City of Denver's Facebook page. And here's something else. I believe you can also find it on the councilman's as well. Access to the translators will be made available as soon as all the translators have introduced themselves, which, as I said a few moments ago, will occur momentarily. Now, what you will do is click on the globe at the bottom of your screen. If you are joining us via Zoom, you will click on that globe and you will see it. We haven't activated that service yet, but I wanted to say this. And again, if you're waiting for Spanish or Vietnamese, that translation is coming and you will see that at the bottom of your screen. Once that service is turned on, you click on that globe and pick the language of your choice. At this time, I will wait for each translator to translate in their respective languages before continuing. So Valentina, you take it away and she will be followed by Kenny.
Thank you so much, Globe. Muchas gracias a Globe. Buenas noches a todos, a todas y a todos. Es un placer estar con ustedes esta noche para Gabinete en la Comunidad. Estaremos ofreciendo servicios de traducción en español y en vietnamita. Para seleccionar estos servicios, haga clic en el botón que parece un globo terráqueo en la barra inferior de su pantalla si está siguiéndonos por Zoom, o encontrar estos servicios también a través de la página de Facebook del alcalde o de la ciudad de Denver. En ambos estará disponible en interpretación en los dos idiomas. Cuando esté en Zoom y haga clic en el globo, deberá seleccionar español para acceder a esta información. Muchas gracias y buenas noches. Back to you, Globe.
Thank you, Valentina. I appreciate that. Does Kenny want to translate in Vietnamese? Kenny, are you there? We will wait on...
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Go ahead,
I'm
Kenny,
sorry.
please.
Yeah. Thì bây giờ đó thì vấn đề mà cái chương trình này đó, đặt trường hợp mà quý vị mà muốn nghe được cái chương trình của Denver City County mà bằng tiếng Việt á, thì ở ngay ở phía bên tay mặt đó có cái quả địa cầu á, thì yêu cầu quý vị bấm cái quả địa cầu đó, thì nó có 3 cái sự lựa chọn. Một là tiếng Anh là English, hai là Spanish, và thứ ba là tiếng Việt tức là Vietnamese. Quý vị nhấn vô cái tiếng Việt á, thì quý vị sẽ nghe được chúng tôi dịch qua tất cả bằng tiếng Việt ha. Và nếu là trường hợp đó mà có sử dụng cái điện thoại đó, thì coi như là ở cái điện thoại nó có 3 cái chấm đó, thì bấm cái đó nó cũng có cái sự lựa chọn bằng 3 thứ tiếng đó, thì mình có thể chọn tiếng Việt thì có thể là nghe được chúng tôi dịch về tất cả những cái chương trình chiều nay cho quý vị hiểu. Cảm ơn quý vị.
I believe that is finished. Thank you so much, Kenny. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that. And thanks to Valentina as well. Now, as I said, you see the interpretation. The globe is there at the bottom of your screen. Click on that, choose the language of your choice, and you should be good to go to participate for tonight. If you need the service of automatic speech recognition, just go to the bottom of your Zoom screen and you will see ASR. That ASR should be there as well as soon as they turn that service on. And just making sure that we really make this as easy and accessible to as many people as possible in the respective districts. We want to make sure that participation is there and we remove as many barriers as we can to you all joining. So Cabinet and the community began with Mayor Hancock, and the main goal being, when this all began, really was to provide access to constituents to have their questions answered, right? So if it's the mayor, if it's the police chief, if it's housing, if it's human services, if it is any entity, children's affairs, all of that, DDPHE, which is the Department of Public Health and Environment, all of those individuals and then some, right? We have on the district commanders as well. So there's a lot to cover, a myriad of topics. Whatever you ask with respect and dignity, tough questions are more than welcome. Commentary and personal attacks will not make it on the show. All of the CICs this year have been and will continue to be virtual to ensure every constituent who attends has the same access as previous attendees. Now, all of this, of course, due to the pandemic. And with that, I want to encourage my Zoom participants to drop your questions in the Q&A. You see it there at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions, please put those in and make sure that you put them in early. What I will do is I'll go through and, of course, asking the questions. Very rarely do I get to all the questions, but we also have individuals in the back of the house that will also make sure that your questions on the Q&A or on Facebook, all of that gets answered, even if they have to bring it over. So you will know how we are doing everything to make sure that you get answers to your questions. Now, I alluded to Facebook. You can also post your questions on Mayor Hancock's Facebook page or on Councilman Clark's page, and even drop your questions there. We have people to transfer those over, and the staff will continue to monitor. So even if I don't get to all the questions, they can then answer some of your questions online. Even if the event is over, there are individual subject matter experts who can go in and they can then send a response to your questions. I believe we're also streaming live on the mayor's YouTube channel, if I remember correctly. I believe that is available as well, and on Council District 7. So before I bring the mayor on screen, I want you to know that following the mayor, Councilman Clark will introduce a community spotlight video of a very worthy individual. Her name is Amy Kinrye. And with that, please welcome Denver Mayor Michael Hancock to the screen.
Hey, Glo, thank you very much. And by the way, it's a gorgeous dining room. Thank you again for hosting us. And to Councilman Jolon Clark and the lucky District 7 residents, thank you very much for hosting this month's Cabinet and Community. We're so glad to be with you all. And we got a lot to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. I want to thank all of our presenters tonight who are going to bring you critical information that you requested, along with Councilman Clark, to help fill some of your questions and concerns about the city and about particular issues. And I'm excited for you to hear some of these thoughts. I want to remind everyone it's election season. 1 week from tonight or today, it will be election night in America and certainly here in Colorado. November the 2nd, you have until 7 p.m. If you have not returned your ballot, listen to me, it's too late to mail it in. If you still have your ballot, you haven't filled it out, please take the time to fill it out. There are some important issues on the ballot impacting Denver and of course the state of Colorado. But let me encourage you to fill it out, and you're gonna have to drop it off at one of the drop-off locations around the city. You can figure out where those drop-off locations are by going to denvervotes.org to find the nearest box to you. You can also find out about vote center locations and mobile voting locations as well from that website, or call 311. We can answer your question. I voted today, and when I went to drop off my ballot, I learned that less than 3% of us have already turned in our ballot. That's not how we roll in Denver. We're very fortunate to live in a state and a city that allows for all mail ballots. We like to get as high as possible in terms of voter turnout, so we don't let just a narrow group of people determine the direction of our city. So please be sure to vote. We are certainly as a city recovering in 2021. My 2022 budget proposal is now in front of City Council. They held their public hearing just last night. The budget process has been very collaborative and mutually supportive one. And I want to recognize the shared priorities that my administration has with City Council as our recovery from the public health and economic crisis is caused by the global pandemic continues to move forward. I am confident we'll continue to work together to help the economy become more inclusive as we recover, more accessible, providing all the Denverites an opportunity to be a part of getting a good job if they don't have one, a stable home, a safe neighborhood, and to start or grow a business, and to continue to be a part of our vibrant and diverse community. So let me just share a few things that are in the budget this year. We're making a sizable commitment in affordable housing, about $190 million to support more housing access programs like down payment assistance and homeownership counseling, hundreds of more hotel and motel rooms for our neighbors experiencing homelessness, more tiny home villages, and more safe outdoor spaces and safe parking spaces. But we're also investing in building stable, affordable housing by investing with partners who are building along inside our great city. We're taking $5.7 million of revenue we're already receiving from sales tax on marijuana and creating a new business development program to level the playing field by prioritizing small business and minority and women-owned businesses throughout the economy. This is a great opportunity for us to do that. And then we're going to be investing about $200 million in capital projects. This includes continuing to invest in our infrastructure, transportation, mobility, parks and recreation, and city facilities. So we will also have some, as part of our efforts, be hiring new first responders. These include our Denver Police, Sheriff, and Fire Department, and of course, 911 call takers. Every one of those departments are understaffed today, and we are needing to ramp up our staffing. And this gives us a chance to do that. And the budget certainly helps us go a long way in doing that. So we expect this budget to come through City Council this month, and we will be well positioned to get into 2022 with a fiscally responsible budget that will help us sustain our recovery, support thousands of new jobs, job training programs, stimulate our economy, help us with housing programs for the homeless, but also make a sizable investment in our neighborhoods through capital investment. Today, I announced that we plan to on making our outdoor patio expansion program permanent, supporting local restaurants and serving more people and hopefully getting people back on their feet. But this program, if there was an upside to the pandemic, was the outdoor expansion program for our restaurants and bars. People love it. I'm excited that we're going to work for the next year to create the policies and to work across agencies to make it happen. Let me just share with you that the Elevate Denver Bond Program in 2017, you and I went to the ballot and we passed the Elevate Denver Bond Program. I'm excited today. I just opened up the new playground at City Park. We also had last week, Arkins Promenade out in the Rhino area. It's going to be a phenomenal mile-long pedestrian walkway along the river's edge between 28th and 38th streets, and will serve as a linear park and create new opportunities for entertainment and recreation for us in the city. We opened up the Bear Valley refurbished tennis and pickleball courts last week as well. I'm just excited that we as residents continue to invest in our city. We have a lot to talk about with you today, and you're going to hear from Chief Paul Payson. You're going to hear from Danica Lee. You're going to hear from Joey Payson, one of our youth leaders of our Children's Affairs, Grace Ring from our Climate Action and Sustainability and Resiliency Office, and Amando Sadat from our Safety Department. We have some great presentations for you, but I'm excited to turn it over to a hardworking member of the Denver City Council, your representative. And I tell you, no one works harder and more innovative than this guy. Let's welcome Councilman Jolon Clark. Councilman Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you and the cabinet here to focus on District 7 and the folks who live in this part of our city. And so I want to say thank you to everybody who is on Zoom here at the cabinet tonight for taking time out of your Tuesday evening to be here. As a member of the city council, I'm part of the legislative branch of your city government, but the mayor is the head of the executive branch of our city government. And as head of that executive branch, she's also in charge of the departments that you're going to hear from tonight. Most of the calls I get in my office are actually trying to get to someone in one of those executive branch departments or have executive branch questions. And my amazing team that I have in our office, we're always happy to help you navigate the city to try to find that right person. But the awesome part about Cabinet in the Community and about tonight, the great news is that tonight you have all those people right here to answer those questions about the issues that are important to you and the issues that affect your everyday life. Tonight, they'll be covering some of the top issues that we hear from constituents about every day in the office, about safety. We have the chief of police here tonight and both of the police commanders that represent different parts of District 7. We're going to get a COVID update from DDPHE, as you've heard. We're also going to get an update on the city's response to homelessness and going to hear about a newly launched street enforcement team. And I'm really excited because tonight you're going to hear from the head of the climate office. And that's an office that didn't exist, that we worked with the mayor's office to create a brand new office dedicated to tackling climate change, doing the things that we need to do as a city on that issue, and that you, the voters, then went and approved $40 million in new funding to fund this office and that critical work. And so you're going to hear directly about that work and that office that's brand new. You're also going to hear about an awesome new Youth Empowerment Center that's opening up in District 7. So there is a lot to cover, and a lot of these things are the things that we hear about all of the time, and you're gonna hear directly from the people doing that work and who can answer those questions. So before I kick this over to the Cabinet and get to the rest of that packed agenda tonight, I just want to make sure that you know that you can always reach out to me. You can call the office, you can email us on our website. We have a form you can fill out, tell us when you want to meet. I'm happy to come meet you in your neighborhood, at your house, at a coffee shop, in the park, wherever it is that you want me to come and see the issues that you're dealing with, the things that you'd like our city to, maybe the things that you're excited about, that you think make Denver awesome, or the things that you think need a little bit of work. Let's get together, let's chat about it. And then I'm happy to go to work trying to help connect you to the people who can fix those issues and can respond to what you're seeing and pass on the kudos that you have for them. So I meet with constituents in the district every week. Katie. So don't be a stranger. Reach out. Let me know how I can help you navigate city services, what you care about, and any thoughts you have on the legislation that the city council is actually voting on every week. We meet 48 weeks out of the year, and we vote on between 30 and 60 things every single one of those Mondays. So I'd love to hear from you on all of that. I'm going to add to the mayor's reminder, please vote. This is a really critical election. There aren't big flashy things like the president or a senator on there, but the things that are on there are really important locally, and they are the things that affect our lives every single day. So please vote. And I'm also going to remind you, if you haven't already gotten vaccinated, please get vaccinated. If you are vaccinated and you're eligible for a booster shot, please go get your booster. We still have a ways to go before we can truly get back to normal, and getting vaccinated is the #1 thing that we need everyone to do so that we can get there. So with that, I'm very lucky that I get to turn it over to our local spotlight for District 7. And for District 7, Cabinet and Community, they chose to highlight West Wash Park resident Amy Kenry, and she and her family have created a car light lifestyle over the years by riding bikes or walking to destinations as much as they can, and that she hopes that her I Am Denver story, which you're about to see, inspires others to do the same and bring more awareness. And I just want to say it's really cool for me because I see Amy out doing her crossing guard duties, which you'll see in the video in just a second, almost every single day. This is somebody who really, really deeply cares about our community and gets involved in that micro city level, in getting involved with something that she sees an intersection that isn't as safe as it could be for her kids and for all of our kids in the community. And she picks up that stop sign and gets involved in little ways and in big ways. So I'm very excited for you to see this video. And with that, I will turn it over for our local spotlight. Thank you.
My name is Amy Kenry, and I am a bike and community advocate. I live in West Wash Park. I've lived in Denver for almost 20 years now, and I didn't get involved in bike advocacy until I threw a bike rodeo at my kids' elementary school. It was a free event. Who knows where the idea came from? A bike rodeo is the most beautiful thing. And it's basically like a festival celebrating bicycling geared towards kids. There's a skills course, there's a rules of the road course. So there's kind of something for all ages. We usually have a food truck, helmet decorating station. It's really fun. And we went out of our way to make sure that those kids who didn't have a bike or were planning to ride the bus home were able to participate. Maybe even better than the bike rodeo was the next few days, because this is really the awakening point for me. The fact that that experience prompted so many more people to ride their bike really got me thinking, like, how many people are out there who would ride their bike, but you know, there's some reason they're not. That's when I started paying attention to what's going on in the city and what's the city doing to make the streets safer or get more people on bikes. Around 2018, I started to attend neighborhood meetings. I'm the vice president of the West Wash Park Neighborhood Association. I'm also the co-chair of the Mayor's Bicycle Advisory Committee. I am a crossing guard. That's a funny thing for me to talk about, because I don't think people understand how great it is and how fun it is. I became a crossing guard because I just wanted to help out, and I wanted to support the other crossing guard that was at our school. The more parent involvement we got with the crossing guard program at our school, all of a sudden other parents started to pay more attention, because if the crossing guard that's holding up the stop sign in front of you, if you know that person, you're much more likely to be respectful.
Come back. This one's a really good. We'll have supper this evening.
There's a lot of dead time, so I bought a speaker. My playlist for crossing guard came about because it's boring out there waiting for the light to change, and kids love music. They suggest songs for me because I'm out of songs. Like, even neighbors, I think, write on that request sheet. I wish everyone realized how important it is to advocate for street safety. We can't make our streets wider, but we can think about how do we move people around in a more efficient way. So we do have a car, and we do use that car. We just prefer not to. I like to say that we are car light. My kids are, they're always willing to jump on their bike. And in fact, it's become such a habit that when I say, okay, let's go, they go get their helmets and they're heading out the front door. I'm really lucky to live in this area of town. I realize that is such an advantage I have. It's frankly easier for me to use my bike. Not every neighborhood has that, and that's something that I would like to focus more on as a bike advocate. If you are not careful when you're driving, it means somebody's life. I wish that people that have to drive or choose to drive, I wish that they would be more aware of those of us that are out there on the street, to just give us some space.
That is outstanding. I mean, I absolutely love that. Car light, definitely. I want to thank Mayor Hancock and also thank Councilman Clark for their input and all the work that they do in that district specifically. And of course, thank anyone who is co-chairing a bicycle committee in this particular climate, just because, yes, it's beautiful and great, but I'm talking about the political climate where it seems like there's such mean-spiritedness, and it is good. So I thank you, Amy, and your entire family for doing all that you are doing. And finally, I definitely want to thank the I Am Denver team headed up by Rowena Alegria for this I Am Denver City Council tribute to District 7. It was inspirational at the same time advocating. Saw an individual who was an advocate who was also doing what was right and really setting the example by doing it. So allow me to introduce our first presenter tonight. She is the Deputy Public Health Administrator of the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment. Boy, that is a mouthful, but Danica is a phenomenal individual. Ms. Danica Lee, and of course she will be followed by Denver Police Chief Paul Payson. But first, Danica, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Glo, and good evening, everybody. I'm happy to be here. Again, my name is Danica Lee, and in addition to being our Deputy Public Health Administrator, I'm the Director of one of our divisions at DDPHE. I am waiting for slides to come up. I'm going to just keep going here. Here we go. So I'm here to share with you this evening an update on COVID-19 in the city and county of Denver. I look forward to sharing about something else. But tonight that's about. Next slide. Okay, so what here is epidemiological curve for COVID over time.
Danica, excuse me, is your microphone on Zoom?
What's that?
Your microphone on. I'm hearing somebody's mic on, and there's like 3 or 4. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so this is our epidemiological curve, and as you can see here, over the last the sustained increase in cases, and this is a little bit in the past. In the past, we've seen peaks. It comes back down. But over the last month here, we have a sustained increase in cases. That is like of the increased vaccination rates that we have in our community right now. Denver's done a great job with vaccination. Okay. I'm afraid we're having some difficulties here. Okay, I'm gonna try. So we also have people coming back indoors more. And so that is, we have kind of some competing factors here between vaccination and people going back indoors. So this is a bit of a new trend that we're seeing over the last month or two, and it is warranting some unique concerns, as well as some, we're watching very closely to see what happens in the coming weeks. Next slide, please. Okay, I am not, there we go, slide is advanced there. So this is a slide that depicts some information about our vaccination rates here in Denver. And as I said, we're doing great in Denver. A huge shout out to every single member of our community who has gone and become fully vaccinated. You can see that we're doing better than the overall population in Colorado. So we're at 84% of the eligible population in Denver versus about 78.3% statewide. Also doing significantly better than our national average. So you can go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back, and thank you so much to all of you who have stepped up and done what is needed to keep our community safe. Next slide, please. So as you are probably aware, in Denver, we did have a pretty a measure starting in August to require vaccine for some people in high-risk settings, for city employees, and people in high-risk occupations. And we recognize that this is tough for a lot of folks. However, this is really necessary so that we're not, dealing with COVID the same way a year from now as we are right now. We have more infectious variants. They spread much easily. You've heard all about Delta. We are concerned about hospital capacity, and in Denver right now, we actually are seeing some challenges with our ICU bed capacity at several of our hospitals. That's something that we're watching very closely. And we also know that generally in the fall and winter months, we need greater community protection because our children are in school. We're spending more time interacting indoors with people from other households. And finally, the vaccination is really important for preventing that ongoing development of new variants. We don't want to be dealing with different variants years from now. So for all of those reasons, it's really critical that everybody who's eligible does step up and get vaccinated. Next slide, please. So we have had great success. The deadline in Denver for that vaccine mandate for people who work in certain settings was September 30th. Today, we have 99.1% of our employees who have complied with that mandate. Huge shout out to all of our city staff, again, for doing what is necessary to keep everybody safe. Other occupations that are subject to the vaccine mandate with that same date of September 30th are first responders, clinical settings, shelter service providers, people who work in overnight and day shelters, people who work in correctional facilities, and childcare providers, as well as personnel in schools. Next slide, please. We do know with the large body of data that we have available at this point that the vaccines are very safe. There is so much misinformation out there. And what is really important to understand is that everybody who's experts in the medical field, all of your leaders, all of your political leaders, they have all gotten vaccinated. And I think that should carry some weight for everybody and folks who maybe are subject to some misinformation. We do have fully approved vaccine. The Pfizer vaccine is fully approved as of August for 16 and over. And we do expect full approval for Moderna and J&J soon. There's a lot of paperwork that comes with approving vaccines, and so that is the delay. We do know that COVID vaccines are proven to be safe and effective. Next slide, please. Right now, we're encouraging everybody who's eligible to go out and get that booster. This is going to be really important for minimizing breakthrough cases, or when there are breakthrough cases, keeping people from getting severely ill. So you can see up here, if you go to the CDC's website or the city's website, you can find more information about boosters. But for folks who got the Pfizer or Moderna and are at least 6 months out from the initial series, many of you are eligible. You can go to your local vaccine provider, pharmacy, doctor's office. And then for the Johnson & Johnson booster, people who are at least 2 months out after their first dose are eligible for a booster dose. Next slide, please. This is where you can find more information. We do update our website regularly. We're also here if you have any questions or want to reach out with any concerns that you have. Feel free to get in touch with us through 311, and you can also always visit the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment online. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danica. I appreciate that. And next up, we have Chief Paul Payson, the Denver Police Chief. It's yours, Chief.
Glow, thank you. I also want to thank Commanders Mark Fleece and Rick Kyle who are joining us tonight. They can help with some of the questions. These are the commanders of Police Districts 4 and 5. Essentially, Police District 3 is the east side of Council District 7, and Police District 4 is the west side of Council District 7. What's going on from a crime perspective? 2021 has some continuing challenges that we're seeing from 2020, not too unlike what is taking place across the country. There are 5 particular crime types that are leading the significant uptick in crime. That is homicides, shootings, burglaries, auto thefts, and car break-ins. Although we are seeing some modest success with some of these areas, or slightly better numbers than 2020, it shows that we still have a lot of work to do. We're also paying close attention to robbery, which is starting to tick up in the last couple of months, and we have a very specific plan and partnership in order to address that. What are we doing about it? You may be aware, or you probably heard about our hotspots or persistently violent hotspot locations. This is an evidence-based approach to address this. We are seeing success in these particular areas with these violent crimes. This continues, and then it expands as we move forward with the success. And then we also do not give up some of the areas that we have had this type of benefits in reducing crime in those particular areas. So focusing on those efforts in a collaborative way. This is utilizing all of the different resources that the city has, partnerships with the Department of Transportation and Public Works, partnerships with the DOTI, the DIDO economic development, also with human services, children's affairs, to do this in a collaborative approach. We utilize nonprofits that help us as well. And again, we are starting to see some success in the first 5 hotspots, and then that program will be expanded. What is it that you can do? What are we asking each of you to help us with public safety is first and foremost to get involved. I'm going to say this, and I say it because it's true, that an engaged community is a strong community, and a strong community is a safe community. So when we're talking about these collaborative approaches, folks have helped us at Alameda and Federal, one of the initial 5 hotspots, with cleanups, with helping the area, supporting the residents and the businesses over there, and uplifting that particular community in order to reduce crime. As this program expands, we're going to ask for your help moving forward. A second approach that is extremely effective, and that is Neighborhood Watch. Police District 3 has great success with the Neighborhood Watch program, and District 4 with their community resource officers are right there to help and support as well. So it's a great program. Again, that is also evidence-based that shows that neighborhoods, blocks that utilize Neighborhood Watch, that they have decreases in crime. I'm going to share one more piece of information. Amy was correct that safety on bicycles is critical. All of us that utilize vehicles, that we need to be very cognizant of individuals that are on bikes, and we encourage multimodal transportation throughout our city. We want everybody to be safe. But one of the partnerships that I'm proud to say that Councilman Clark has led is a partnership that involves reducing bike theft and getting bikes back to the rightful owners. So Councilman Clark and Councilman Cashman brought forward an idea, a program called Garage 529. We're working collaboratively to get this implemented as quickly as possible, but not only will it help us reduce the impact, the negative impact of people having their bicycles stolen. But if a bicycle is stolen, it's a great way to try to recover that bicycle and get it back to the rightful owner. I'm going to hit pause right there. We'll open it up for any potential questions, Glow, or we can wait till the end to try to get us back on track.
Well, you know what, I'm sure we'll probably do a little bit of both, Chief. So I do have one question for you that has come in, and this is from Dawn, and she is asking, what is the plan to address street racing and gunfire on South Broadway in Platte Park, Overland neighborhood? So she's talking about 2 things, street racing and gunfire in those specific areas. I know you may want your commanders to follow up with your response, but go ahead.
We do. Commander Kyle, can you jump on and answer this, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chief. Rick Kyle, Commander of Police District 3, which is the area of Council District 7 that is east of the Platte River. And this question is specific to District 3. So 2-part question. Street racing has definitely increased through the pandemic. We actually saw it spike even through the winter of last year. And because of that, we created, and thanks to Chief Thomas and Chief Payson for their support in this, created a citywide task force to address this. We have officers from around the city that are out at the most common times that we experience street racing. And because of that, we've actually, in the past 3 or 4 months, seen a huge decrease in street racing, which was an excellent success. The reports have gone way down, and even the groups that we were seeing numbering in the hundreds earlier in the summer are now maybe 5 to 10 when we even see them. So please, if you do hear or see street racing, continue to report them, because we use those reports to inform our future strategies, the times, the dates that they're occurring. If it's an emergency, 911, if it's a non-emergency, 720-913-2000 to report that. Second part of the question about gunfire. This is an area of the city that actually has very low reports of gunfire. The one kind of area that we saw as a nexus for it in this neighborhood was the Habibi that was at 1800 South Broadway. And this was speaking, Chief was talking about some collaboration that we have. This was a great collaboration from multiple city agencies. We worked with Councilman Clark's office. This location had become a public nuisance, and working with those agencies and the property owner, I got an agreement for them to shut down operation and is no longer open. It was an after hours kind of place that was operating. We'd see people come from the bars after 2 o'clock, and then gunfire would result in that. And that was kind of the one hotspot that hopefully now will be resolved. Other than that, we really have low incidents of shots fired in the neighborhoods, Overland, Platte Park, Rosedale, University, kind of in the area there that are very, very low compared to the rest of the district and the rest of the city. So if you are hearing that, please give us a call. One of our goals is to get illegal guns off the street. We're seeing, unfortunately, huge increases in illegal guns on the street, and that's one of our primary missions, and the officers do a great job of that. But please give us a call as soon as you're hearing gunfire. That's an emergency, so please call 911. We can get there as quickly as possible and hopefully interrupt that happening. So thank you.
All righty, thank you so much there, Commander. I will say that we are getting some questions in. I know, Anita, your question is coming up because you are asking about youth violence prevention, and we do have Children's Affairs on this evening, so that question will get answered this evening. Also, Palais or David Palais, that is also another question that is coming up. We will have Q&A at the end, as well as Q&A after each presentation. So thank you so much, Chief. We are going to move on right now, but he is not going anywhere because he knows the mayor will more than likely, as he usually does, call on him at the end of tonight when it is time for Q&A with the mayor, with Councilman Clark, as well as any of the department heads who were here tonight. So next up, it is going to be something that is really quite special. We will hear from Denver Human Services about immigrant refugee resources, and they will be followed by a presentation from the Office of Children's Affairs. Told you, Anita. So that will come up, and they will give us an update on the newly purchased Youth Empowerment Center located in the Valverde neighborhood. You'll also be hearing from Joey Pace, who is with the center, and with youth leader Jimena Santos. Very nice. But until then, let's hear from Denver Human Services.
Hola, mi nombre es Victoria Aguilar con el Departamento de Servicios Humanos en Denver, con un mensaje muy importante para nuestra comunidad inmigrante en Denver. Entendemos que debido a legislación federal pasada y mala información que ha circulado, quizás usted tenga miedo de acceder nuestros servicios vitales. Queremos asegurarle que estamos aquí para ayudarle y apoyarle para que su familia esté saludable, seguro y conectado a recursos. Le animamos a que visite nuestro sitio de web donde podrá aplicar para beneficios y servicios vitales y nuestros trabajadores de caso están disponibles para ayudarle. Nosotros y nuestros aliados valoramos lo importante que es usted para nuestra comunidad.
Thank you so much, DHS. Very important services that you all provide, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. So thank you for all that you do. Now, I want to turn it over to Children's Affairs for their presentation. Joey?
Thank you, Glo, and thanks to everyone for joining tonight as well, too. I've seen some of the questions come in, and it seems pertinent for us to spend a few minutes talking about the recently purchased Youth Empowerment Center building. I'm Joey Pace. I'm the Youth and Community Outreach Director for the Office of Children's Affairs with the City and County of Denver. The recently launched youth violence prevention work is housed out of our office, so all the work that's being done around youth violence is kind of being led by our office, but to what Chief Payson said, said, it's not strictly us. It's a collaboration both between city agencies and community partners as well too. To set some context about where this new building came from, in November of 2019, our Mayor Hancock really prioritized youth violence prevention. We'd seen an uptick in youth violence across the city and some real high profile cases. Denver Health had recently released their gun violence report around youth as well too. The mayor prioritized this as being a very important issue we needed to address. He formed the Youth Violence Prevention Action Table, which its whole purpose was to get all the city agencies together, break down some of those silos that we tend to work in unintentionally, and really think about what are we doing collectively to address youth violence. We know the real work is happening in the community by community organizations, by parents, by schools. So how does the city work together to make sure that they're getting the support they need, identify where we're doing well, as well as some gap areas that we could do better in. So when that was launched, our city attorney, Kristen Bronson, was asked to lead that initiative. Unfortunately, the COVID crisis hit, but I think all of us recognize that crisis really elevated the work. Chief Payson and others have alluded to it as well. It was kind of predicted that due to the COVID and due to the extra trauma that was happening in communities, we could expect maybe an uptick of violence. So we felt where oftentimes people will kind of put on the back burner initiatives, this needed to be prioritized. So what we did in 2020 in the COVID, we actually created a short-term action plan that identified immediate needs in communities that we could actually get done by the end of 2020. How do we support community organizations that are really struggling with funding? How do we support young people who no longer have access to mentors? So we worked a lot on those initiatives and efforts, but we also recognized that youth violence prevention was a long-term strategy. So we created a long-term strategic plan that would run into 2021 and beyond. Two big things came out of that. One was creating a position for the Youth Violence Prevention Coordinator. That position is housed here at the Office of Children's Affairs, and that's run by Jonathan McMillan. Some of you may know Jonathan. And the other thing was actually creating one of numerous new centers in the city in communities where young people need it the most, where young people could go get the support they need, as well as their families, have mental health services, have services available to them that are workforce focused as well too, just a place that they can go and really get their needs met as well too. Seemed like a pipe dream during the COVID when everything was being impacted, and that we really did not expect to be able to get started so soon on that. It just so happens the former PAL building at 1240 West Bayard Street became available for purchase, and our colleagues at DEDO, Department of Economic Development and Opportunity, chose to purchase that building and actually allow us to take it on as being the first of what we hope to be many youth empowerment centers to come. What we're hoping to do is really create one of many hubs where young people, particularly those who are the highest risk of being somehow impacted by youth violence, can come and get the resources they need, get the support they need, whatever it is that they are struggling with, or maybe not even struggling with, we can support them with. What we recognize though, and we've kind of created a mantra with our youth violence prevention work, is it really is community-led, youth-informed, and city-supported. So before we even started planning anything with the building, we decided to form a youth violence prevention advisory council for that building. We wanted to hear from young people in Southwest Denver about how best to utilize that space. So I say that to say I've invited one of our youth advisors who's been a part of this process from the beginning to come on and share a little bit about why this is important for them to be at the forefront of building this building out, what they've been working on, and what they truly see and envision this building being. And so without further ado, I'm going to ask Jimena Santos to join us and speak a little bit about the role youth have been playing in this new Youth Empowerment Center.
Well, first, I want to start off with thanking Asia and Juan from OIM for giving me this opportunity to speak here tonight. And my name is Jimena Santos. I am a junior at Denver Collegiate High School. And I think youth and the young generation are pretty much our future. And having their diverse and unique ideas about how to create a safer community are really important. And me personally, I have been involved with the Youth Empowerment Center since the beginning. And since the beginning, and me and the other youth have seen the building grow into what it is today. Before we put the banner outside saying Youth Empowerment Center, and we hope to see more come out of this building and center. And we basically brainstorm ideas of how to create a safer community. And we also brainstorm ideas of what the center can provide. Like, for example, financial classes to provide feminine products, and even have like even be able to have classes where you can teach young people how to even change a tire, the basic necessities in life. And for me, this center gave me a little bit of hope, because me and the other youth have joined to end youth violence and create a safer community, and to see families and friends be safe. And we, unfortunately, me and the other youth, have experienced violence in some sort of way. And we hope to see the center become a beacon of hope where our community can feel safe. And thank you again for this opportunity. And Joey, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Jimena. Jimena is probably as busy as any one of us. She's a 16-year-old attending high school and has a lot of plans, but this building and the space is so important to her and her peers in the community. We just thought it was so important to bring her voice to this. And our commitment is to make sure that young people continue to inform us and guide us. We recognize that if we're building things without including them and asking them what they need, it's our fault if no one's showing up into that space. So what we're doing right now in the building is the building will actually be turned back over to the community. What we'd like to see is the community really take ownership in it. We are in the middle of a process right now where community-based organizations are applying to take over ownership of the building. The RFP has been released. It closes this Friday. And by mid-November, we hope to select an organization that's capable of really maximizing that building space. The Office of Children's Affairs will be a strong partner with them. We'll work to make sure we're helping remove some of the bureaucratic issues, whatever barriers they're faced, to make sure that they're fully equipped to utilize that building as well too. We'll include young people in making that process. We will be transparent about whoever the groups that making these decisions are, those people that are going to be impacted by this as well too. Until that happens, we've been basically offering some very minimum city services out of there. We just didn't want to see the building sit and not be used. So we've had Denver Human Services offering some very basic needs out of there. DEDO, Department of Economic Development Opportunities, been offering, did a job fair there. Department of Safety Youth Services is meeting with their clients there. About a month ago, we did a sneak peek to invite community to come in and see the space and give us feedback as well. And we're slowly allowing community organizations to kind of use the space for one-offs, just so we can create some foot traffic in that building as well too, and really hope to take ownership. We're really excited about this building. We appreciate the mayor's vision for this, that this would be one of many to come. We invite anyone and everyone, if you want to learn more about it, to reach out to us at the Office of Children's Affairs. Again, thank you, Jimena, for coming on and really elevating young people's voice in this work, because it really is the most important piece of this work. I'll stop there to see if we have any questions.
There is a question before we move on, Joey. There is an individual who is asking the question about youth violence prevention. She says, I know that the city is working on a youth violence prevention plan. How are we working with youth in Southwest Denver and Southwestern Denver schools?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Well, one, Jimena, as an example, the Youth Advisory Council or all youth from Southwest Denver, we intentionally wanted young people from that neighborhood. We know neighborhoods are different and we know needs are different. So it was important for us that the young people who would most likely attend those centers, or at least their peers, would be informing that work. So that's one way we've been engaging them. The other is really working a lot with local community organizations. We work with Pearl Lopez out of District 4, Leo Alirez at Lifeline. There's numerous community partners who have trusted relationships. We recognize as a city agency that there sometimes can be lack of trust, and it's a very founded trust. So what we work with is what we consider as trusted messengers. We want to make sure that we're working with community partners who understand what we're trying to do, who understand that we want to be authentic and really support their work, and hear from them and say, what is it young people need? We support the Summer Youth Employment Program. We look at the data to make sure that young people in Southwest Denver are just as represented and reflective in participation as others. We can always do better, and we're always open to new ideas, but there is a real intention. And I would even say that I think an example is Jimena. We're going to ask her, how do we better serve youth in Southwest Denver?
I don't think she's there. I think she may have stepped away.
And I was just saying that I think she's an example of that. We're continuously asking young people how better to. So I'm going to lean into Jimena as we continue to work together as being an expert, knowing how to better do that.
Excellent. Joe, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And Anita, thank you so much for your question. There are other questions. We just want to make sure that we leave enough time at the end of this program for you to ask some of those questions, as well as ask questions of the mayor and Councilman Clark. So we are going to move on. I am seeing many questions in the Q&A. I'm also seeing questions coming over from Facebook. So I'm trying to at least get one question in per presenter. There will be time for more. I'm just trying to make sure that I am adequately spacing out, as we had some challenges technically, and it's caused us to get a little bit behind. The mayor is very aware on this Tuesday night, to be cognizant of everyone's time, being respectful. Those things are extremely important. And so I want to thank Joey and Jimena for all that they are doing. Now I'd like to introduce Grace Rink. She is the Executive Director of the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. It is one of Denver's newest agencies, created in 2020. Grace, take it away. I think you're muted.
Got it. Thanks. Thanks so much, Glo, and thanks very much for the invitation from Councilman Clark. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening and to tell you about the great work that my colleagues and I get to do every day. So many of us have known for a long time that climate change is an existential threat. And the latest report from the United Nations made it clear that the planet has crossed over from climate change to a climate crisis. The mission of this office is written in Denver's municipal code, and our first charge is to act with urgency to mitigate the causes of climate change and to strengthen the resilience of our communities to the environmental changes already upon us. I always say that stakeholder engagement is in CASR's, our agency's DNA, because this agency was created just last year out of a collaboration spearheaded by active residents and supported by the mayor and Councilman Clark. Our office works to pass new public policies that will require or that will get our existing buildings to achieve net zero by 2040, to ensure that Denver's electrical grid is powered by 100% renewable energy by 2030, and that access to electric vehicle technology is widespread. But that's not enough. When we do this work, we're committed to centering our focus on equity. And what that means for us is that any policies we pass and any programs we offer must directly benefit the people and communities most harmed by climate change impacts: people of color and Indigenous people, low income and under-resourced communities, people living with chronic health conditions, babies, children, and older adults. Now, in the 2020 election, Denver voters overwhelmingly approved Ballot Measure 2A, which created the Climate Protection Fund with a 0.25% sales tax that now provides our office with about $40 million per year. The fund is allowed to be spent in 6 categories: workforce development, renewables, community scale adaptation and resiliency, climate and environmental justice, sustainable mobility, and energy efficiency in buildings and homes. Our 5-year plan for this fund will be released on Wednesday, November 3rd. We'll publicize it broadly, and I'm sure the councilman will send it out to you as well. The plan sets a broad vision for the types of investments we expect to make with this funding. And I want you to know that it's not just for funding projects at city buildings. the tax was recommended by the Climate Action Task Force, which was a very diverse group of residents, advocates, and experts who made it clear that the intent is also and primarily to fund projects and programs in the community. So pictured here is one of our first investments this year. We funded 2 nonprofit organizations to open e-bike libraries for our essential workers. This has been a critical lifeline for people in communities where RTD service was severely reduced due to the pandemic. And these e-bikes are one more support they have for getting to work and managing all the essentials of life without having to own a car. So far this year, we have made $7 million in investments, and we have another $30 million in the queue. And one of our biggest contracts is headed to City Council in less than a month to fund the construction of 10 community solar arrays. So again, the council office will have the announcement to share with you soon. And now, as I just mentioned, our 5-year plan for the Climate Protection Fund is required to be released November 3rd. And that's right after COP26 begins. That's the United Nations conference in Scotland that's following up on the Paris Accord, which was agreed to in 2015. We are excited to make the most of the international attention around that event. All eyes will be focused on the climate discussion, and Denver has great things to say about what these big international level discussions mean here at the local level. Denver is only the 2nd city in the nation to have a taxpayer-supported climate fund, and we already have so many projects and partnerships to highlight. And of course, this work is only just beginning with the release of this plan. By next summer, you can count on seeing some big, impactful policies being presented to City Council. Our proposed building performance policy, which will get our large buildings to net zero, as I just said, is headed to Council in the next month. Our proposed net zero codes for new buildings will ensure that all new construction buildings and homes will be net zero by 2030. And starting this spring, we hope to present the first in a series of new policies that will increase our waste diversion from 32% citywide to 70% by the early 2030s. So I'll end where I began, with the urgency of our mission. It's going to take a long time to draw down the carbon already in our atmosphere, so it's critical that we work together to stop greenhouse gas emissions today. I so appreciate the trust that you have given us to steward the Climate Protection Fund's tax dollars, and we're putting them to work right away to mitigate the causes of climate change and to improve the lives and health of the people in Denver. So thanks so much for your time. I'm happy to take your questions, and I'll hand it back to Glo.
Thank you so much, Grace. I appreciate that. It is very interesting, just, as we look at all of the sustainability and the resiliency and what that means and how each of us can help. I think that it is extremely important. What has been one of the biggest things that surprised you most about this new agency, and not so much how hard it will be, but how easy it will be to affect change?
I think that we are in a very enviable position. When I started in this job last year, I was one of 11 people, and we already have 26 staff people now.
Wow.
So you have a small army of very dedicated, passionate folks who are working on these projects and policies every day. And now the voters have trusted us with this large fund that we actually get to not just talk about the work that needs to be done, we actually get to incentivize it. We get to fund it. And we get to work with community members as they tell us what are the projects that are going to be meaningful for them in their communities. What does success look like to our neighborhoods when it comes to climate change and resiliency and adaptation? We now get to fund that. And it's really exciting for all of us to get up and go to work every day.
Absolutely. And that makes, it really does make all the difference. We've got another question coming in. I believe it came in from Facebook. How will the Office of Climate Change reach out to communities of concerns in District 7, as well as the language barriers that are there and social economic disadvantages? In other words, if you're socially economically disadvantaged and you're looking for a job, all of those things, the last thing probably on your mind is climate change. How do you get through that hurdle?
That is such an important question. And as I mentioned earlier, we really do focus all of our work in equity. And I'm so pleased to say that we recently just hired our first community partnerships administrator, and who is a native Spanish speaker, and his entire job is to be out in the community talking with folks about, again, what are the needs of their community? What does resiliency and adaptation look like to them, and how can we help fund that work, and how can we support it? We have our sustainability advisory council, which is such a fascinating and fantastic group for us. This is 120 individuals who told us they want to volunteer with our organization on a series of committees very much aligned with the 6 allowable uses of the fund. And they are actually working on an equity evaluation framework for their work as they make recommendations to us, so that they can be sure that they have evaluated issues of equity in all the recommendations that they're making as well. So it truly is the heart of our work. We know that we can't succeed without our stakeholders, and we absolutely want to work we want to make sure that the work that we fund is truly improving the lives of people here in Denver who are most harmed by climate change impacts.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much, Grace. Thank you for all that you do
Thanks
with
to all of
everyone in
you.
your office. Yeah, absolutely. And so next you will be hearing from the director of the Street Enforcement Unit. That is Armando El Celdate. Armando, it's yours.
Thank you, Glo, and thank you to everyone on the call, especially our community members who have taken the time out of their evening to come listen to us all. I want to talk to you today about Department of Safety's specific response to homeless encampments. I hope you all are seeing my slide deck.
Yep, we are.
Okay, so let me. So first of all, the issue of urban encampments has really grown during this pandemic. In October of 2020, recognizing that an all-hands approach was needed to try to curb what we were seeing, a lot of small encampments that were come across downtown corridor, down in District 7. So our director, Murphy Robinson, asked me to head up an early intervention team. This was the first as a team of firefighter, Denver Human Services, resource navigators, where we really tried to reach out to the smaller encampments to try to do connections to services, do crisis intervention, to try to get folks away from living out on the streets and these under a tarp in many cases, or out in the cold, and try to get them to more temporary shelters on that pathway to housing. We continued to operate this team through July 31st of 2021. And then we began this team started their full-time program under the Department of Public Health and Environment and the Office of Behavioral Strategies. And this team, the early intervention team, which is outreach focused, is going to be transitioned over to the Housing Stability Office in 2022. What we've been doing since July 31st in safety is we've developed a street enforcement team. And the street enforcement team is a civilian-based, unarmed, 6-person team that has delegated enforcement authority to issue citations for low-level quality of life ordinances. What are some of these ordinances? Well, one is the urban camping ordinance. The others that we will frequently utilize, particularly in the area of urban encampment enforcement, are trespassing when those encampments approach onto private property, right-of-way encumbrances, parking offenses for those vehicle-based and RV-based encampments, which we really see a lot of those down in Overland Park, Baker, that Broadway, or that Santa Fe corridor, specific to District 7, around Vanderbilt Park. In those areas, we've seen a lot of these vehicle-based type encampments. The team right now is going through a lot of training. We started that training a couple of weeks ago with our city attorney's office prosecution section that is really giving us the training about those ordinance violations that we are able to enforce. We're also getting training in the areas of trauma-informed care. We're doing trainings on first aid, unfortunately, we encounter a lot of folks that are that are utilizing substances or misusing substances, and we have encountered folks that are overdosing and have overdosed. So we are also being trained to administer naloxone to hopefully provide life-saving assistance to folks that may have overdosed. There's a number of trainings that we're going through, crisis intervention training, hazard awareness training from our fire department. As some of you have known or some of you experienced in some of the neighborhoods where these vehicle-based encampments have proliferated around, there has been fire hazards around these encampments, particularly in the cold weather. We recently had a small explosion on just in South Santa Fe near Bayard from an encampment. So these are things that we are really hoping to mitigate with our street enforcement team, and that we can get out there and help. A lot of reasons. What were the driving factors of the street enforcement team? Why did we, and my screen's frozen, and why did we start this team? Well, really, the encampment call volume, complaint call volume really grew at the beginning of 2021. I think it coincided with the fact that we had a lot of people now coming out of, we were in lockdowns and more people were coming out and about and seeing encampments and then calling about those encampments. Once we saw that rise in calls, we tried to direct encampment calls to 311. We saw a huge rise in that call volume from 311 from March when we started that and into the summer. We then tried to get those calls channeled back over to police non-emergency and through the Pocket Gov app, so folks can make those complaints of encampments online. But one thing I'll tell you from my experience in answering these calls, whether it was on the outreach side or now on the enforcement side, is the tone of the calls has shifted. We are hearing from many of our residents, our business leaders, our business owners, and many in the community that are fed up. They want more increased enforcement around encampments. They don't want these encampments to last and be there out there for months at a time. They want them cleaned up. They want the encampment, the urban camping ordinance enforced. So we, in public safety, we worked with our police department, worked with other city leaderships and departments to try to establish, how can we be responsive to this increased enforcement, knowing that our police is as Chief Payson stated earlier, increasing crime volumes, but also reduced resources. Every one of us are dealing with reduced resources. So then we looked at what had been working, and what we saw was the STAR program demonstrated that alternative response can result in better outcomes. STAR is that response that we piloted through this last summer, and prior to that, where we had a paramedic with a mental health clinician responding to certain calls, and we found some real successful outcomes. And it wasn't sending a police officer to those calls, it was sending a clinician and folks that were ready to handle that. So then we also looked at park rangers, right-of-way enforcement. There are other civilian enforcement models that have proven successful out there. And then also, I just want to tell you, what we find is that when we can sit at an encampment, engage, make sure that they've had the opportunity for outreach engagement, connections to services. Once we get to that point of enforcement, we will and typically do get compliance to move them along. As the mayor touched on earlier in today's meeting, he talked about all the great services that have been offered, all the work and investment that's being done to house folks and to keep folks that are in housing and keep them that may be behind on rent and those things been housing, and that's what our partners at the Housing Stability Office are working on. This is really another initiative within safety where we're trying to answer the calls from the community for increased enforcement, to try to get out there sooner rather than later when these get out there, and then start those steps towards enforcement. The team should be fully operational here in the next couple of weeks. And lastly, the slide I'd like to share with you is just showing that increase in encampment complaints. Starting in March, you'll see the blue show up, and that is the 311 calls that came in. Now, when someone calls 311, they are directed to a to the non-emergency police line or Pocket Gov for those complaints. I'll tell you, we're working really hard. I've been in at least 2 meetings today about, we're trying to make it a more singular intake system for these calls for encampment complaints. But I will please tell you, please, if you see an emergency, you see a crime in progress at an encampment, you see an assault, you see something that's happening now, crime involved, please call 911. That's where those calls belong to, and the police will have an immediate response. But for those calls of the encampment that's down the street or at the park or on the street, please call non-emergency police, Pocket Gov. We are getting to those. We are coordinating our efforts better in response to these encampments, so we make sure outreach can have an opportunity to engage at these encampments, but that we can also enforce. And in those cases where we need to do 7-day cleanup notices and other types of posting for legal requirements, we get those started sooner rather than later. And with that, Glo, I'm going to pause there and see if we have any questions.
Thank you so very much, Armando. I will ask you a question that has come in from Beth. She says, what is the status of the camping ban? Does it forbid people who are on the street from using a sleeping bag? And why can't they be moved out of the way?
So it's pretty complex. So if people are on the street and they are, on a sidewalk, or they're right of way encumbrance, and and that's a violation of the camping ordinance. It could also be in violation of right of way encumbrance. It could, if they're in a park, that there's curfew violations. Yeah, it is. However, there are what we try to do is we try to go out, we try to engage those folks. A lot of folks are in crisis. A lot of folks need certain help and those things. So we try to do that crisis intervention. If folks have substance misuse orders, we try to get them connected to the right service. It's a lot of times it's a medical, there could be an emerging medical situation that we try to deal with. And then secondly, we also then try to get them to another location. We try to get them to a more stable situation, whether it's a shelter, whether it's a safe outdoor space, whether it's the New Solution Center where they can really treat longer term mental health issues. Those are the types of interventions. Sometimes it's getting them into a hotel so we can stabilize them and have some follow-up to get them engaged into better services. But yeah, in the cases where there's larger encampments and there's more tents or things like that, we then have to abide by some of there's a legal settlement case, and there's also an injunction where we sometimes need to provide a 7-day notice to everyone there and their property that a cleanup will ensue in the next 7 days.
Thank you so much, Armando. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Stick around. This is the point, ladies and gentlemen, where the mayor, as well as your Councilman Clark, come on camera and join me for your questions. And so I want to encourage you to continue to put them in the Q&A. And even if you're watching on Facebook, there are individuals who will bring those questions over. If there was a question that you had for the chief, if there's a question that you had for Grace from the Climate Office, that agency, that brand new agency, if there is a question that you have for Joey, all of those things can be addressed at this point. And so I see the mayor and I also see the councilman on camera right now. Is there anything, Mayor Hancock, that you want to add to Armando's response to that question about the status of the camping ban, and does it forbid people who are on the street from using sleeping bags?
Yeah, the only thing I will add, and I think Armando did a wonderful job, Glo, this is, and he started by saying it's complex, because it is complex. The city of Denver does have a camping ban. Many of you alluded to it. We do work to enforce the camping ban. When we have, a combination of things happening in our city in terms of a rising crime and shortage in the police department, it makes it harder to try to catch those things early on. It's one reason why we're getting to a civilian enforcement team to come onto the street starting next month that Armando referred to. But I think most residents don't realize Denver's also under a federal order, that when we do have an encampment, that we cannot just go in and abate the encampment. We have to actually post it on a federal orders, posted for 7 days before we go and clean it up. And so oftentimes what you see in terms of the increase in complaints that people say, we see it, we know you see it, why aren't you moving in and clean it up? And unfortunately, we have to allow for the prerequisite amount of time after posting the situation before we can move in.
All righty, thank you. There is another question that deals with some of that as well, Mayor Hancock, but this one is for Councilman Jolon Clark. Jenny says, I was curious to get an update on accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and what the timeline would be for allowing them citywide. It appears that several neighborhoods have recently had their zoning changed to allow ADUs constructed. So, Councilman Clark, what do you say?
Yeah, there is not currently an effort to get citywide. There are, as you get across the city, there are a lot of different what zone lots, what development patterns look like. There are places that have alleys. There are places that don't have alleys. There are places that have big lots and little lots. And so far, there hasn't really been a way to really tackle in a way that has come together all of those different things, right? What does an ADU look like when you don't have an alley? A lot of people are like, oh, it's a little, and for those of you, ADU, accessory dwelling unit, or a granny flat, an area above a garage or where a garage would be, that's an extra unit that requires the person to live in the home, and then they can rent their accessory dwelling unit. And so while there's strong plan support in our big picture plans for ADU rezonings, it's not as simple as just kind of saying, okay, now this is allowed everywhere in the city. And even if it were, there are a lot of areas where there are other hurdles that just having the zoning wouldn't allow them. So what there are often, though, in neighborhoods or parts of neighborhoods, that pattern, that lot pattern is similar enough, predictable enough, and there's enough support right now for that in those neighborhoods that they've started to do that. We've seen a lot of that with my colleague, Councilwoman Sandoval in District 1, starting to see it with Council Member Torres in District 3, and we're now hosting with CPD information meetings for the Valverde and Athmar Park neighborhoods in District 7 to look at, is there the support? Is this a predictable enough pattern that doing this would allow this use in those communities? And so I would encourage anybody in the district who's interested in that to join on some of these, even if that's not the neighborhood that you're writing in from. I don't know if you said which neighborhood this question came from, but even if that isn't your neighborhood, join in it and get on this, because what gets the ball rolling is a group of, in Athmar Park, there were a group of residents who formed a committee as part of their neighborhood association to say, hey, this is something we want to pursue. So now we're working on how do we work with CPD? How does the council office sponsor that, like it's been done in other places, to see if we can get to a point where we can apply that on the neighborhood scale. But it's much more complicated citywide. I'm not saying that we'll never get there, but so far that problem hasn't quite been solved. And so I would say, get involved at the neighborhood level. Individual, we get lots of individual applications for that too, but it doesn't have to just be individual. It can be, an entire block. It can be a part of a neighborhood. It can be the entire neighborhood that we can definitely work with you on. So reach out to me, whoever that was, reach out directly. Happy to connect you with other people in whatever neighborhood you're in who are like-minded and are looking at how do we get ADUs, going where you are.
Absolutely. He says, thanks, W. So W, you know who you are. Reach out to the councilman. Getting people hired. This one is both for the mayor as well as for Councilman Clark. I will also say I have a question that is coming up that deals with sports for youth. And Mayor Hancock, they also refer to you, saying that you got a lot of sports when you were younger. Chauncey Billups are saying is a product of that, and they want to know, as it relates to youth, how that's going to look. So Joey, I am giving you a heads up, sort of like a tease for commercial. Question coming your way next. But Mayor Hancock, how hard is it, or is there anything that can be done? I hear this so much. People need to hire people, and folks who, as they say, are being ghosted. They say they're coming and then they never show up.
Yeah, that's an issue, Glo. And the reality is, many of us are asking, where is the workforce? Because every industry you go to, there is a challenge right now in terms of needing laborers. And one of the big things that I can tell you we are focused on is workforce development, working with employers as well as people who need or are looking for jobs. If you want to work today, it doesn't matter which city you're in, but we're talking Denver, Colorado, you can find work because everybody is looking for employees. They're trying to incentivize employees. I know we're doing it with some of our departments in the city of Denver, but the question is, where is the labor force? You know, at the onset of COVID, everyone went home and they haven't really fully emerged. And so a lot of industries are struggling, and we are working through our workforce development office to assist. And so folks who are employers, if you're an employer, we can help you by calling 311 and getting a hold of our workforce development team over in the Office of Economic Development and Opportunity. If you're an employee, we can do exactly the same. We also have training programs, particularly in construction, to get people trained up and into new opportunities for themselves.
And
someone just put in the green workforce development as well. I don't know if you're going to go there, Councilman Clark, but I know Grace talked about that as well.
Yeah, if I can, Glow, if that, can I, yeah, I lots of workforce work, programs through our climate fund that I think are really exciting, but also just wanted to highlight, Mayor, that just today in committee, we had the construction, I just pulled up the name of it, and then my screen, of course, changed for this, but the Denver Construction Careers Contribution Fund coming out that you guys are putting in front of us that I'm really excited about. Just had that in committee. That's a fee on certain permits that will go into a fund that will then work to help on the construction side, where we're seeing critical job shortages, to fund training programs in our Denver public schools, getting kids engaged in those career pathways very early. That we just had the first presentation in committee today on, that I think is a really innovative proposal coming our way to help specifically on the construction jobs part.
Excellent. I'm going to ask this last question for Joey, and then we will get back to the mayor and Jolon. And yes, that was not planned. That was really a doggone doorbell. So you know what? Welcome to live TV, ladies and gentlemen. This one is from Francisco Garza Ortiz. He says, we need to see more sports involved in the community. A long time ago, there was a young man by the name of Michael Hancock who brought sports to children from the Denver housing projects and allowed the youth, the children, to look forward to a future in sports. The mayor is a product of that. Chauncey Billups is a product of that. I'm going to start with Joey because it deals with youth, and I certainly want the mayor and Councilman Clark to chime in. Go ahead, Joey.
Yeah, Glow, I think there's definitely some alignment with the youth violence prevention work. If you look at what the CDC recommends is increased protective factors. When young people are involved in pro-social activities, sports is a pro-social activity, that's a protective factor, right? We've all been impacted by that. I do think when we engaged young people about the Youth Empowerment Centers, sports didn't come up. We do have a population of young people where sports aren't quite as prevalent and popular. I think the key is to offer various opportunities. We've seen with some of our Night Moves 2.0s that the basketball wasn't as important. So I do think sports are important because they're a protective factor. I also know young people are really busy, but I will say that there are, our office with our youth violence prevention grants, there's the out of school time initiatives are funding sports programs as well too. I think what we need to do is think about what sports would young people want to come and show up to as well too. I think that's key as well too, but no doubt we've all been impacted by sports, and it's been proven to be a pro-social activity. And when young people are involved in pro-social activities, they're less likely to be involved in in bad activities as well too. But I think we can keep asking and rely on people like Jimena and the other youth to tell us what sports programs. And I will say also our parks and recs are opening back up. Our rec centers are opening back up. So let's make sure we get in there and support them and help them and get coaches and volunteer coaches. And we have enough staff to help coach these sports teams, because that's the other key too, is we need adults to be coaching these teams.
All righty. Thank you so much, Mayor Hancock.
Yeah, I think Joey's right. I think the difference between the time Francisco was one of my young people that I did sports program with some almost 30 years ago. I remember it very well. I had hair and we had money devoted to getting young people involved. The reality is that our young people have so much more that takes their attention these days, from the electronic games to so many more after school activities in the school buildings themselves. And athletics are not as big as they used to be, and certainly not as prominent in terms of the only thing that we have available to us. The city of Denver now has 30 recreation centers around the city. and growing. So we didn't have that many rec centers when we came along. So there's just a lot more to go on. I know we're short in time. I just say there's a lot more things for our young people to be involved in, but sports should still be available for those who want it.
Thank you so very much. Now, this one is for Councilman Clark, and this is coming from Mark. He says, what are the 2 or 3 things Lucky District 7 residents and people who work there can do to make it better? Now, after you answer that, Mayor Hancock, you can wrap it up from there.
You bet.
There are, I think that's such a great question. And again, what I love about the city and being involved here is that it is those things that are right outside your doorstep. And so, I think I have some awesome constituents who are always out picking up trash, organizing trash cleanups in the neighborhood, doing beautification, and really helping neighbors out. I think one of the best things that we can all do from a safety standpoint to help deter crime, but also to create that community, that sense of community is, neighbor leaves a garage door open, help them make sure it gets closed before something gets stolen, shovel a walk, we have a lot of folks in our community who've been in their homes like my parents have now for over 50 years in their house, and they need help with pruning and mowing. And so, take a walk down the block and instead of just kind of being focused this way, look around and lend a hand. And I think that's what really makes District 7 just an amazing place to live, an amazing place to, have, I technically grew up in Paul Cashman's District 6, but nearby, to have grown up and to be raising my kids is all of those ways that all of us step out there. And instead of just focusing on us and all the stuff we've got going on, take a second to say hi to somebody. I love what the mayor's done with Denver Days and people coming out and saying, I met somebody who I've lived on the same block with for 30 years and I never talked to him until now. So host a block party, pick up some trash, shovel a walk. I think those are the things that really make our community great that people can do every day.
Could not agree with you more, Councilman Clark. And I can't thank you enough for you and Lucky District 7 hosting this town hall meeting. Always enjoy working closely with you. We've been able to do a lot of good things over the years. Your leadership is just tremendous. And for the resident District 7, you might recall your councilman served 2 terms as president of Denver City Council, which says a lot in terms of how he's respected by his colleagues on council. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. This has been just phenomenal. Gloria Neal, once again, Director of Urban Affairs for my team. Thank you very much for your tremendous work. All the presenters tonight, our Channel 8 team and our fearless leader behind the scenes, Katie Stracina. Thank you very much. The entire cabinet and the community planning team. So many people, so many efforts and hands, eyes, bodies go into making tonight possible. We want to thank our interpreters from language to hearing impaired. We thank you for all that you've done to make tonight possible. We will be in Council District 6 with Councilman Paul Cashman next month. You're welcome to join on to that one as well. If you had a question that wasn't answered tonight, we'll try to get to it. But until then, take care of yourselves, be safe, get vaccinated. If you haven't been vaccinated, be sure to vote on Tuesday. Again, don't drop it in the mailbox. Go by one of those vote centers to drop it off in the box. You all have a great evening. Remainder of your evening. We'll see you next month.
Denver, and not just voters, but folks who are our young people, who aren't voters yet, but they can still be eligible to vote. The city still matters to them. And it's important for folks to be able to have that one-on-one conversation, especially with somebody who's a trusted source, right? In this case, it'll be our office. We don't expect, and we shouldn't expect good governance to just be people coming to us. Sometimes we have to go to the people. For us, what that means is being able to get in every single neighborhood and engage with people one-on-one. Not everybody's